again, this is sort of the inflow versus outflow. If you look at both sides, this total's the same. But the groundwater, the way they calculate is how much of it is coming from outside the territory of India and how much of it is going outside the territory of India. But the groundwater, as you can see, the drawdown and the precipitation, but a lot of it goes back. So you have so much comes in, a lot of it goes back, some of it goes through on the surface, and the rest of it, and if you are starting to draw on this much more than you should, you got a problem. So they measure, again, this water stress, withdrawal versus available. And you can see this whole area, you're looking at 40 to 80% withdrawal versus supply. So this is where you see we got a problem.
So supply there is before or after evapotranspiration?
Yeah, what you put in the ground. So we'll look at a little bit here, but this is hectare meter. Again, a lot of us are used to acre feet. And what they do is this groundwater availability for irrigation. Actually, there is a lot of work has been done, so it's not like people are not aware of it. There are water tools that are available. You can go on those sites. There is a whole water resources ministry. They just recently, in 2012, prepared a national water plan. Places like India, the problem is not the planning, the problem is how you implement that plan. However, again, you see here in this part of the country, we are looking at pretty low to medium availability of the groundwater. And remember, right after independence, in the 60s, some of you remember, there was a major shortage of food, there was famine. Actually, we used to, when I was growing up, we used to call it PL 480. US supplied a lot of grains during that time to ward off. And, you know, I remember as a child growing up, that grain that came from US didn't make those naans really nice. They were not they were pretty rubbery. And we used to, however, but that's all there was available. So there was at the same time the Green Revolution, a lot of incentives given to farmers, and you'll see in a minute, free electricity, all kinds of 24-hour supply of water, produce more food, more water, so which is good. However, what that does so this is the way, and I still remember in my mother's village, my uncle, they had a device like this. It's a little ramp, here is a little well. You have a big tub of water, I don't know, takes probably about 50 gallons at a time. And you pull it up, it was a lot of fun. And you watch it, and then the bullocks go down, and then they go around, and then in the meanwhile, the tub goes down and you build it up, and you watch it, and it was kind of fun. However, it's not very efficient. At the time, in 50, they had probably 2,500 in the entire country, either diesel or electric wells. Now nobody knows. Actually, this site says nobody knows. Because technically, any mechanical device that draws water should be registered, should be approved, should have a permit, but it doesn't work that way there. So this is just the best estimate that these people did, somewhere in the 20 to 25 million water pumping facilities, which are electric or diesel, let alone hand pumps and so on. So again, that's good. Punjab in the northwest became the breadbasket of India. However, we'll see in a minute. So here is Delhi, here is Agra, here is Jaipur. I grew up in this place called Aligarh right here. And you can see on Google, this is pretty dry area. You're pretty close to the desert, and you start to see a little bit of green. This is, as you can see, about 200, 150 miles or so This is about 200 miles. And this is the drive that I was talking about 10 years ago when you go. It's pretty scary, and that was 10 years ago. So this was in Delhi this last summer. And now the press refers to water mafia. And about 8 months ago, people in the outskirts, some of you have been to Delhi, Noida, which is where all the big multinationals have their beautiful offices, people have bought $750,000 to $1 million apartments, but they cannot get water there on a 24-hour basis. So then they have water trucks come and provide water, so the rich people at least can send out their servants to go bring water, but the middle class people, and they are now trying in certain parts ATM kind of setup for water, where you put in money and then you bring water home. But this water mafia, what they do is they go to the river, which is right, goes through Delhi, Jamna, and they fill up water, which may not be potable water, but at least for other purposes, and this done in the dark of the night. And I'm sure people know who's doing what, but that's the only way these people are managing, at least during the summer months. So you have that, you know, as again, most of you know, 60–70% of the rain comes in India during June to October. And if you don't do anything with it during that time, it's all gone. And if you have bad monsoon, then you have even much more scarcity. So it's not distributed throughout the year. You have a little bit of rain in the winter, but most of that from June through October. So here is satellite. This is GRACE experiment. It's actually managed by Jet Propulsion Lab. And essentially, just like the deep gravity that we look at for oil and gas, you have two satellites going over, and they measure at the very, very shallow surface, and they can measure the thickness of the ice sheets as well as the groundwater. And I did not know that until 10 years ago. But then, right after I came back from that trip from India, this image showed up in SEG. So you can see this is the golden triangle for reference. This is 12 centimeter plus and a little bit more, and this is 12 centimeter. So from here to here is about a foot, a little more than a foot. So this is 2002, and this is 2008. This is 2002, and this is 2008. So in 6 years, in this whole region, the groundwater level has gone down at least by a foot, and then if you are in bigger cities, then it is really, and you see the numbers for Jaipur. So, what is causing all this? Obviously, government has been giving these incentives, and what they, people, even if they are living in the villages, they see what kind of incentives will give them the most economic benefit. So, a place like Punjab, which has less rainfall, but because of the cash availability for some of the crops, they are using so much water, and you'll see in a minute. So in Punjab, rice shouldn't be grown in Punjab because they don't have enough rainfall to have, you know, standing water, whereas in places in the Maharashtra, sugarcane. So one of these things was that the incentives were there for people to produce more in the wrong place, in the wrong location. And however, how do you change that? That's a question of public policy, politics, local. So all of that gets beyond the technical questions. And you'll see in a minute, toward the end, some work that has been done at Columbia. According to them, if people just change around what they're producing in different parts of the country, food security will remain the same, and the water consumption will go down considerably. But how do you convince a guy, well, don't plant rice here, we want you to grow this here, and this guy here, you don't produce this, you produce something else. So And then, of course, as industry grows, people are wanting more cars and more, 21st century living. Cities keep growing up. Delhi and Bombay and Calcutta, they are now in the top 20 populated cities in the entire world. And Delhi is also right now is the most polluted city in the entire world, beats China in that measure by almost an order of magnitude. And some of you have been to China, and Chinese cities are pretty polluted, but Delhi, Bangalore, which is actually, we were there and we thought Bangalore was okay, but Bangalore doesn't meet UN standards of air pollution. So hardly any city in the entire country comes within even twice the UN water pollution levels. So for irrigation, as you saw, I don't know the number in US, but generally you want to use 30 to 40% of your water for irrigation. We have all this rain, but only 6% is stored. And out of the 91 reservoirs, 25% capacity, and some of them have had less storage in more than a decade. So that's one of the things that people who are doing work at Columbia, they are coming up with another measure. What we do is we have an average, we say we had an average drought. But what they are saying is, like again, our bank statements, once you draw down on your savings, you got to go from there. So you shouldn't be doing an yearly average of your water scarcity. You need to look at the running average of where you had the biggest drought and go from there, because during the biggest drought, you draw down your water level much more significantly. So if you have few years of average rainfall, it will barely get up to that level where it was when you had that big drought. And when you have average drought, then you're going down from there. So again, I won't read all this, but it's pretty commonsensical kind of possible things you have to do, but you have to do it at the local level, from individuals to local governments to provincial governments to federal governments. So a lot of it is not so much technology, but politics and economics and local conditions to try to solve. However, there is some work being done on aquifer mapping and data management that's available, and I'm sure there is a lot more technical information available in non-public domain. But in order to get to a level where it will start to help is a whole. So let me go back to the history a little bit, because remember, I'm going to talk about, in one talk, history, religion, politics, and economy. So I've already talked about religion. You saw the water hydrologic cycle god, right? So again, Akbar, who was, this is his reign in the 1500s. It was a pretty big area they were controlling, and he had his capital in Agra, and he had done some major victories, so decided to move his capital about 30 miles, 25 miles away from Agra. And if you go there, it's a pretty impressive facility he built, but they ran out of water, and they had to move back to Agra, and then if you go there, all of that is preserved, but there was originally a smaller village and smaller settlement there before Akbar went there, but as soon as the emperor lives, then all of a sudden big development, a lot of people move in, and then they found they couldn't get water, so they had to move away. Of course, you have seen, many of you have seen, if not, you see this picture, and that was done by his grandson. And I know many of you have been there, but this was in LA Times. So it's the same river that goes from Agra and in Delhi. But during the summertime, first of all, they've diverted the water, it's highly polluted, and you can see hardly any water is left. And I just saw yesterday there was a big concern because when the Emperor Shah Jahan built this, he built it right at the edge of the river, and the foundation is built on wooden beams. And the idea is, it's like our houses in Dallas, those wooden beams have to remain relatively moist. And if the water goes down, now the big worry is that the beams are starting to dry and collapse. And one of the tall towers, part of it did fall, and the big worry, in addition to that, there's a lot of industry all around Agra and nearby. So there's a lot of concern in Indian press. That's sort of the iconic site in India, and it's lasted almost 350, 400 years. What's the future for next 40, 50, 60 years? Jaipur, again, if you haven't been, it's a very, very nice place. Rajasthan and Jaipur is still one of the better managed provinces in India. They dropped their water table 60 feet in 15 years. Until the 50s, they had about 40 different storage areas all around, just natural dams and so on, all around town. And most of them have either silted up or built up. So they started to draw on water table, and the water table is, as you can see, draw down 60 feet. And I don't know exactly what these people were doing, but it looks like they were trying to go down the well to get water. This is a astronomical observatory. There is one in Delhi as well, and that was built by one of the local kings, Man Singh, around middle of 1700s. So we'll try to look at some of the possibilities of what can be done